You're listening to 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College in Garden City, New York. I'm Bill McIntyre here with John Gallo, bringing you news stories about Long Island and about Long Islanders. Well, welcome to this week's Long Island News, and we're glad to announce, John and I, that we're now joined by Nassau County Legislator John R. Ferretti Jr., the second-term Republican, serving the constituents of the 15th District, which encompasses all of Levittown, Salisbury, and parts of East Meadow, Bethpage, Wantagh, and Seaford. Legislator Ferretti, how are you?
Bill and John, how are you? I'm doing very well.
We know that you've been in the press recently. We saw a couple of stories. We know that you're working on specifically a resolution regarding the Nassau County school districts to be able to comply with the ability to basically do COVID testing. I know there's an issue apparently with some laboratory licenses. You want to speak a little bit more about what exactly is going on and why you think that's so important?
Sure, absolutely. So just at the kind of a threshold issue there is the New York State guidance indicates that if a community is zoned yellow, meaning that there's a high 5% positive rate in that community, then the community is deemed yellow, and schools under the New York State guidance, in order to stay open for in-person learning, have to test 20% of the students and staff.
Okay.
And they have to do that in order to stay open. Now, there are many parents with children in school who don't agree with that guidance. There are many that do. And my resolution doesn't really address who's right in that debate. It's not about the debate as to what should be. It's more about what is. And the reality is that our schools will not stay open for in-person learning unless they comply with the state guidelines. So what's the problem? The problem is superintendents have been contacting me from all throughout Nassau County that they essentially can't comply with the guidelines from the state, because Nassau County is the only county in New York State that is not providing the school district with what's called an LSL license. Okay, and that LSL license is a license that is in the possession of each Department of Health in each county. And it allows the Departments of Health to do satellite testing for different tests, whatever the tests may be.
Yep.
And so under the state guidance, in addition to requiring the schools to test 20% of the staff, 20% of the children if they're zoned yellow, the guidance also says that each county must provide the LSL license to the school districts to give them a mechanism to do so. Okay. And so by Nassau County not providing this LSL license to the school districts, the school districts are put in a predicament. They have to go with one of the other options to do the testing, one of which being hire an outside vendor to come in and do the testing at great expense to the school district, which ultimately gets passed down to, of course, who? The taxpayer, right?
Of course.
So what my resolution does, it requires the Nassau County Department of Health to provide that LSL license to the school districts. And, you know, it passed the committees this past Monday, the committees of the Nassau County Legislature. We're going to be voting on it in the full legislature this coming Monday. And then it would, of course, go to the county executive's desk to decide whether she would sign it into law or veto it. But look, the key here, and I'm saying this not just as an elected official, but as a father of two young children who are both in school, I believe very, very strongly that in-person education has to remain an option for parents. If parents so choose to keep their children home from school during the pandemic, that is a personal choice that I very much respect. But I firmly believe that they need that option to send their children in for in-person school, in-person education. And I feel it's my job to make sure that we give the tools to the schools to comply with the state guidance. Whether I agree with that guidance or not, we have to give the tools to the schools so they can remain open, because the reality is they're going to follow that guidance, whether we like it or not. And we need these schools to be open.
That makes a lot of sense. I definitely see, why you and a lot of other community members and parents, feel that, again, if they feel safe putting their kids back into school, they want to know that those methods and measures are there so that they can, again, be tested and that everything can kind of keep moving smoothly, as thankfully we've seen relatively a low infection rate in a lot of the schools being open due to a number of practices people talk about and having a little more discipline and the structure maybe there in the schools.
I'm curious, though, since there's going to be a lot of on-site testing, there's got to be a cost associated with that, no matter licenses, regardless of the...
Yeah, so, I mean, I can't speak to the individual school. Obviously, each school district has different size staff, different size
of course.
Student body. But basically, the tests are provided by New York State for free.
Oh, okay.
And, of course, when I say for free, of course, everything's a cost, right? But there's no upfront cost to the school district for the tests. And they are provided to the county, who then can distribute them to the schools.
I see.
No cost to the schools. So if you if we were to provide the school districts with the county LSL license, like every other county is doing, and like the guidelines require, then the school districts can use in-house nurses to administer the COVID tests. So, I won't get into the contractual issues between the nurses and the school districts.
Right.
But the point is that this is an option that's by far that has the smallest fiscal impact on the school districts. If we provide the LSL license at no charge to the school district, they get the tests at no charge, and they have in-house nursing staff that can administer the tests. And I can tell you, the biggest school district in my legislative district is Levittown. And they've indicated to me that they can do it in-house. They want to do it in-house. Right now, they're not in the yellow zone, but they're preparing to be in a yellow zone. And so they already are lining up vendors at great expense that they, in my opinion, should not have to do. And if they do have to go down the road of getting a vendor at great expense, again, who is that going to be passed on to? It's going to be passed on to my constituents. And, one of my main goals when I was elected was to keep the costs down, keep the taxes down. That was a pledge that I took to the people that voted for me and even those who did not. And that's what I'm going to fight to do every day I'm in office.
Understood.
Well,
understood. And
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, of course.
Makes a lot of sense.
But at the same time, like you said, I know people need these services. And just real quick, can you speak, why again was Nassau County the only county to not be opted into this limited service laboratory license program with the New York State Department of Health? Was there any real ground?
You know what? You'd have to ask the Department of Health. That's a question for them. I can't speak for them. I could tell you that the Department of Health, since the beginning of this pandemic, has been exemplary. They've done a fantastic job. They've been open and transparent in terms of providing the information to both elected officials and the public. They've been on top of everything, working tireless hours, and I really commend them. However, on this one issue, I don't agree with the path that they've taken, but I can't speak for them as to why they've taken it.
Of course. All you can do is try to adapt, to meet the needs of the constituency, given the reality.
I'm trying to think of what kind of a situation would have. What was the impetus for other counties to pass this, and we didn't?
Well, just to be clear, there was nothing passed in other counties. They just followed the state guidance and provided the LSL license. The reason that the reason I'm proposing this bill is because we're not following the state guidance. So I'm putting I'm requesting that this bill be passed, so it's a law that the Department of Health has to provide this LSL license.
Okay, but just to clarify again, the other counties, they didn't have to file independent legislation to
correct.
Interesting. Yeah, that's
correct.
That's confusing.
They're just providing it. For example, in Suffolk County, the LSL licenses can be utilized by the school districts. The county LSL license, they are providing it.
That is a bit peculiar. Yeah. So, okay, good that you're bringing some attention to that issue. And like you said, hopefully, we don't need to go into the yellow zones and further, but if we do, it's better to have the plan ahead of time than it is to have to figure it out, obviously, kind of at the moment. So that's good to know. Thanks for, again, kind of being an advocate and, obviously following that issue. I know there's some other issues in the news that we know we'd like to get your opinion on quickly. We'll go to some of the other legislation that you've been focused on, but maybe big picture for the county. There's been a lot of news in the last week or so about the county freezing property values for tax, evaluation purposes. Could you speak a little bit more about that, about what you feel and, again, what your position is on
Sure.
why that decision was made?
Yeah, so what we're talking about now is the countywide reassessment, which began multiple years ago. Now, I can't think of any elected official in Nassau County that did not believe that we needed a reassessment. We all agree we needed to do a reassessment. The problem is the reassessment that was undertaken in Nassau County by the county executive it didn't work. So we're left after a reassessment with still incorrect assessed values. People are grieving in mass. So when people grieve their assessment to try to change it, if they think they're overassessed, we had the most grievances last year, the first year of the reassessment, out of any year in the history of Nassau County. So clearly, there's no confidence by the Nassau County residents that this reassessment was done accurately. The result of the reassessment is what we've seen is 65% of Nassau County homeowners have received a tax increase, the property tax increase, on the first tax bill since the reassessment, which of course hit about a month ago with the school taxes. It's come at the worst time in the middle of a pandemic. The county executive predicted 52% would see a tax increase. It would essentially be a toss-up. 50% would see an increase, 50% would see a decrease. As we expected, and when I say we, I'm speaking as for the majority in the legislature, we didn't believe that, and it's turned out to not be true. About 2/3 of Nassau County residents have received a property tax increase as a result of this reassessment the county executive has done. In terms of the freeze, like I said, what we're seeing are inaccurate assessments. So all a freeze is going to do is to freeze in inaccurate assessments. It does not lower taxes. The reassessment and the reassessment tax increases are still going to be phased in for an additional 4 years, okay? And the freeze is nothing more than a reaction to these massive tax increases that people are receiving. It's an admission that the reassessment was a failure, and it's really just going back to the old system, which is how the system got broke in the first place.
Yeah, no, I understand. Like I said, that there are longstanding issues, and that obviously the Republican majority definitely have always made their position very clear on being in favor of lowering taxes, especially on the middle class. And most electeds wouldn't want to really put their neck out on a different position. But I hear that concern. And my thought is, and like we said, obviously this is coming in the context of COVID and the fact that there's so many other economic challenges that it makes sense that at least some temporary freeze would, in theory, stop it from being raised even further. By your again.
Well, John, I got to just stop you for a second. So you got to remember there's a difference between reassessment and taxes. Okay, so assessment just says the portion of the pie, the portion of the tax levy that you're going to be responsible for. So just because you're freezing the assessed value does not in any way mean that the taxes will not be increased on your property. In fact, 66% of Nassau County residents saw a tax increase this year. That is going to continue over the next 4 years because the tax increase is phased in over 5 years. So again, although saying we're going to freeze assessment often is an indicator, people think that means that your taxes are not going to go up. It is quite the opposite. More people will continue to see tax increases under the county executive's reassessment for the next 4 years, regardless of whether or not they have a frozen roll. What the frozen roll is going to do, it's going to put the onus on the residents, once again, to grieve their assessment every single year.
Make the appeal process.
And that's what broke the system in the first place. So this is not an indication that in a pandemic taxes won't go up. It's quite the opposite. And in fact, put reassessment aside for a second, the 2021 budget, which was passed about a month ago, the county executive put $10 million of tax increases. Forget reassessment. These are real dollars. $10 million of increases in her budget. Okay. The Republican majority amended that to remove those tax increases. She vetoed our amendment to remove those tax increases. So you have the reassessment tax, which has resulted on 2/3 of Nassau residents receiving a tax increase, with an actual tax increase coming January 1st, 2021, because she baked it into her budget and she vetoed our tax cut. So what we're seeing, it's the same old story. It's more spending, more taxes, and it's coming at the worst possible time. And I vehemently oppose all of these tax increases.
Of course, understood. And no, we all see your point. But at the same time, we all know that there is a need for services, and obviously at the county level, at the state level, at the federal level, we all are hearing the need for funding at every agency for the municipal services, whether it's police, EMS, FDNY in the city or whatever the equivalents are out here, obviously on the island, that they do need to be funded. And I don't even think about it in the sense of a year potential. And I know our director was talking about his taxes going up despite obviously the assessment freeze this year, but just the nature of having more time in the legislature to potentially maybe make some policy changes that I know you and your colleagues may be working on. That is the only thing that I could see as potentially maybe being something that comes positive out of this. But yeah, definitely that's a longer conversation and one that, we look forward to having more in the future. But just moving to another topic, I know another thing that's been in the news lately and we'd like to hear your opinion on is the discussion about LIPA oversight and accountability. Obviously, Nassau County was impacted a lot by Tropical Storm Isaias, and there's still damage and there's still some debris, I'm sure, that people see in the streets, throughout the county. Could you just talk a little bit about that? It was amazing to us. We were talking to Mark Harrington from Newsday the other week or so, and just to know that they are exempt from PSC control. Can you just tell us a little bit more about, again, your opinion on this, again, kind of situation?
Well, John, we live on an island, and obviously when you live on an island, you're subject to extreme weather. My district is somewhat fortunate in that it's in the middle of the island, and so generally we don't, the Levittown, Westbury, East Meadow area is generally not as affected as the South and North Shore when we get a storm. However, I'll tell you this, the storm back in August that we had, the first week of August, that storm caused more damage to the Levittown, Salisbury, East Meadow community than Hurricane Sandy did. Wow. I mean, we were devastated in the middle of the island with that storm. And maybe it was the wind pattern. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but the response from LIPA was completely unacceptable. It was a storm that we knew was coming. It was a storm that they didn't prepare for it. What was most frustrating to residents, look, everyone knows you can't control the weather. And here's the reality. We have electric lines that are above ground. Okay. Mm-hmm. They were put there, 70 years ago. And the cost and expense of burying those wires, which is the first thing that residents always ask for, is for the wires to be buried. I don't think it's practical at this point. Okay. So you're going to have down wires. You're going to have power outages. But when you're calling PSEG for an update and they tell you that your power is going to be on by 11 o'clock tonight, and then you call back at midnight and they say, it'll be back on by 9 a.m. tomorrow. And it just keeps getting backed up for days, weeks at a time. It's a failure in communication. It's a failure in IT. Their texting and their infrastructure, technological infrastructure was failed. They failed on every level during that storm. And it's unacceptable. We need to have oversight over it. We had a hearing on the PSEG failure in the county legislature back in the fall. I don't know if it was beginning of September, I believe. And we will continue to demand answers on the county level. But ultimately, it's the state that really needs to have oversight over PSEG. But from our perspective in the county legislature, I could tell you that we're going to keep our eye on it. We're going to continue to put their feet to the fire. We're going to hold them accountable as much as we can. And we will at least bring transparency. If we can't do anything in terms of having actual oversight, we will bring transparency to the issue for the residents, and we will get them answers.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds fair. And I'm sure, your constituents appreciate that. And, like we said, it was fascinating for us when we spoke with Mark Harrington from Newsday, just to know that PSC, again, doesn't have any oversight over them. So I know the discussion will keep evolving, and people are definitely looking to see things change because, like you said, there was a lot of mistakes and missteps that shouldn't really have happened. And I think that's what's being kind of bared out by a lot of these reports coming out now.
I think it's big what you're saying, John, the transparency.
Well, you know what it is, Bill?
We went through this once, right? We got rid of Lilco. We got PSEG. Who was at the switch when we decided that these guys were going to deliver what they said they would deliver?
You're right, Bill. And Nassau residents are fair-minded, reasonable people. If you tell them, look, this is a tremendous storm. We have 70,000 houses without power in Levittown, for example, and it's going to be 5 days before we get your power back on. Look, are people going to be happy about that? No, they're not going to be happy about that. But don't tell me it's going to be on by 11 o'clock. Yeah. Okay. And then the next day, tell me it's going to be on by 8 o'clock in the morning. And don't lie to me.
The false expectations.
Be honest. Be open and transparent. That's what residents want, not just with PSEG, with the reassessment and with everything else that we're dealing with. And far too often, entities, elected officials, et cetera, are not open and transparent, and that's what we need to change.
Well, I think also that as the company approaches this, PSE&G approach this, some people's method of doing business is to promise everything and then hope you can deliver a percentage of that's acceptable to your customer.
Yeah.
I mean, they all say, we're going to run in here with 85,000 trucks and fix things overnight. And, who says, oh, okay, because that's just unrealistic. Long Island's got to know, too, that I don't think some of the things that these people promise are even possible. And yet, Sign right here. Let's take them.
Well,
are we going to do this again? That's what I'm concerned about. But you said the transparency. As long as we're all watching,
it makes it harder for them to get away with the same things over and over again. So, all right, thanks again for joining us. We do want to remind our listeners that you will be, again, back in session, like you mentioned, on Monday at the county legislature. And we know there's some things you're working on. We did want to mention, maybe we'll have time another day, I know you were working on a rodent control program funding situation that unfortunately may have gotten vetoed. And, we'd like to know what your prospects are for that, maybe down the line, and some other things you're working on. But and like I said, just thank you for joining us. And also, we wanted to mention that you are, I believe, involved in an effort with Toys for Tots, too, this holiday season. So if you just want to speak about those just kind of quickly in closing as we wrap. Thanks.
Of course. 2020 has been a tough year for everybody, but it's certainly been a tough year for those who are always most in need. And this year, more than probably any year since Hurricane Sandy, for sure. But even in the Hurricane Sandy era, there are so many children who are not fortunate enough to be able to have a Christmas this year where they're going to have Santa come. And so I'm working with Major Chuck Kilbride in the Toys for Tots program to, provide some level of normalcy for those children. And you'll see at multiple locations, restaurants throughout Nassau County, all the government offices, in the town of Hempstead and in Nassau County, bins where you can drop unwrapped toys in, and it would go a great deal in bringing a smile to children's face on Christmas that otherwise will not be smiling. So if you have the resources to contribute, we'd certainly appreciate it.
Definitely. And you can find out more information online, I'm sure, on the county legislature pages. And also, where can people follow you on social media? Where would be best to follow your legislation? Yeah,
sure. So Facebook is always the best place. I think I'm the most active on Facebook. And you could just put in Legislator John Ferretti Jr. I also have a Twitter account and an Instagram as well.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you so much, John.
Great to be with you. All right. Have a happy holiday if I don't speak to you.
Merry Christmas.
You too.
Holidays. Be well.
Bye-bye.
Be safe.
Bye-bye.
Let's remind our audience that they've been listening to 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College. And you're here with John Gallo, and I'm Bill McIntyre. And we have on deck Mr. Robert Brodsky from Newsday. Hello, Robert. How are you?
Hey, Bill. I'm well, thank you. Happy holidays.
Yes, to
same.
You too.
Same right back to you. We know that you've been busy reporting on a lot of different stories that impact Long Islanders, as always, but especially this week. So we wanted to get you on to talk about a couple of things. Obviously, there's more discussion about the SALT tax cap repeal and what prospects there are for that going into the new legislative congressional session and with the new administration. But also, you were writing, I know, a bit about COVID and about the vaccine plan. And I know that's top of mind for a lot of people. People saw the kind of photograph that went kind of around the world about the first individual in the UK who had gotten the jab, as they refer to, of the vaccine. So do you want to talk about a little bit about that? And I know there's some other segues. I know you wrote about opioids and the impact of the COVID virus on care and other things. So maybe we'll start on COVID and we'll move and branch out a little bit.
Sure. It's been it's a busy week, and obviously there's a lot of subjects going on. It seems like the vaccine is scheduled to reach New York State and likely to Long Island later this month, within the next couple of weeks, maybe even sooner. It's according to Governor Cuomo, it's going to be going first to first responders, healthcare professionals working in hospitals, along with individuals in nursing homes. From what I understand, those individuals who are going to be getting it have already been contacted and notified that they are going to be recipients. State officials haven't really kind of showed their hand yet about, and maybe they don't know yet, about exactly when the distribution is going to begin, but it certainly seems to be happening on a rapid pace, certainly before the end of this month.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's good to hear. I know everyone's been kind of waiting for that light at the end of the tunnel, and it seems like, thankfully, it's starting to get closer. And we're good to hear that the FDA, I know there was a panel that did approve yesterday, I believe, if you can give a little more light about what that decision was, but on again, clearance for the vaccine to be distributed.
Right. So the FDA is approved the necessary clearance for the Pfizer vaccine to begin distribution. There's a number of vaccines everyone's probably heard of at this point. There's probably about 3 or 4 that are the most recognizable: AstraZeneca, one by Oxford University, by the Pfizer vaccine, by Moderna. Coming out at different times, they're all sort of on the same path, but some are a little further ahead. Some are 2 shots, some are 1. Some need to be kept in a much colder storage. So there's different vaccines coming down the path at different speeds, different levels of efficacy. The big question is, at this point, will people take it? The first set of individuals set to take the vaccine are almost certainly all going to take it. You're not going to see too many emergency room doctors and nurses saying no. I would venture to guess you're not going to get very many people in a nursing home who are going to say no, especially when that presents them with an opportunity to finally see their family members at long last. The bigger question is the general population. We've seen numbers anywhere from 50 to 60 to 70% indicating they would take it, but that doesn't get you anywhere near far enough. If half to a third of the population do not take the vaccine, we're still going to have a major problem. And that's just, in New York State. I would imagine those numbers, that gap is going to widen in more rural areas and elsewhere across the country. So we still have a long way to go in terms of an education campaign to educate New Yorkers, Long Islanders, and residents of the country throughout about the safety of the vaccine and why it's needed.
Yeah, no, of course. That's what herd immunity is all about. Like you said, having to be able to reach that threshold. And I know there's a lot of concern about especially immigrant and minority communities not having the access to the necessary information to make certain communities more comfortable with the vaccine. So we're hoping that, like you said, that advocacy and that public health campaign is definitely well executed, because it's certainly important. Go ahead, Bill.
No, I mean, I was looking at the schools already. There are going to be some people who are in a position to not really decide whether they take the vaccine or not. They're going to be told they have to take it.
I would imagine, my personal opinion, not based upon anything I've been told by the state, but I would imagine that by the time the school year begins in 2021, so September, that an adequate amount of time had probably passed that they would mandate. There may be some levels of exceptions, but I would assume that the state would mandate vaccines to enter school in 2021. That gives everyone a good 9 to 10 months to get comfortable with it, to learn everything you need to know, to get in line. I mean, the widespread assumption is that most of the community who would want a vaccine could get vaccinated by summertime. So I would imagine September would be a appropriate time to have a mandate. We'll see. There is certainly going to be a level of I wouldn't call them anti-vaxxers, but people who are just still concerned about, this is still a rushed process. It's still new. It's still scary to a lot of people. So you can't necessarily blame them, but at some point there has to be some level of enforcement. Otherwise, we don't ever get this thing completely under control.
Yeah, right. Well, and there's got to be some indication that it's going to work.
Yeah, no, definitely. There's skepticism, and I think the real thing is when there's a body of evidence, and it's not just these kind of closed door, proprietary, medical studies, but when it's people seeing, somebody, they took the vaccine, they're fine. Now that
I think we're going to go through
kids, it becomes a
little
bit more.
I think we're going to go through the same things that we went through with the flu. We will probably go through. I don't remember who I spoke to, someone from Newsday, about when the flu season came around. And my question was, why do we always do this dance every time, guys saying, I'm not getting the flu vaccine, I'm not, or I am.
Well, I know I hear it all the time from even my children, because the flu vaccine doesn't guarantee you that you're not going to get the flu. And my daughter, she is 9. She got the flu last year, even after getting the flu vaccine. But she got a very mild case, and it lasted 48 hours. And I tried to explain to her that the reason the flu likely was as weak as it was because of the vaccine. But if you put that in the context of COVID, and, I still contracted COVID even after getting the COVID vaccine, but I had a mild case, that's going to depress a lot of the interest in getting it if they think that they could still contract, and more worrisome, could they still pass it? So there's still going to be some level of skepticism, and that's going to be it's going to be a tough hill for everyone to climb on this one.
Yeah, no, it seems it. And just to the point, I know, Bill, you had mentioned before, and it makes sense with the schools, but I know something that probably will be at play will probably be even union contracts and different, again, kind of individual kind of privacy concerns. But I know I did hear the other day, I believe the FDNY commissioner, Negro, had said that FDNY doesn't, I believe, intend to make it mandatory, at least as of now, the vaccine for their first line responders. Did you hear anything about that, Robert? I don't know if that.
I remember hearing that in passing. I don't believe it's going to be mandatory just yet, but I mean, these are tough decisions, and we haven't seen. I mean, mandates in and of itself during COVID have been a kind of a very tough nut to crack. We have mask mandates when you enter private businesses, but there is no statewide mask mandate for every level of being outside and in about it. So it's usually set by the individual businesses or on a government property. We certainly don't have a federal mandate. So mandates in and of itself have been kind of challenging. And what do you do about enforcement? These are difficult, and we're sort of trusting individuals to do the right thing, and trusting them that if the fact of the matter is, unless we take the next step here, we're going to be living in kind of purgatory with social distancing and masks and hybrid learnings for an indefinite future. And while it's not, I'm talking to you from my home in East Meadow. It's not the end of the world, but I'd like to get back to Newsday's office sometime soon.
Of course. Definitely. You can only do so much from home versus, when you're in that kind of environment where everyone's together, kind of a little bit more free flow of ideas and everything else that comes with it, socialization, everything else that we've talked about before. Okay, so I guess segueing from the vaccine, we did realize that it was reported this week that there were more COVID deaths so far in December than in August to October, apparently in Suffolk County, according to the Suffolk County Malone executive.
It's incredibly troubling numbers that the county executive of Suffolk, Steve Ballone, announced just yesterday. Yeah. We had, as everyone would probably recall, the summer months were quite good in terms of seeing a decline in COVID across New York State and Long Island as well.
Under 1% a lot of the times. Yeah.
Under 1%. We had days where there'd be no deaths on Long Island at all. And so we saw a handful of deaths, single-digit numbers in August. I think there was 10 in September, and it went back down again in October. And looked like we had this under control, but just like many of the public health experts had suggested, the numbers climbed up in November. The weather got cold. People went back inside. They started having more family gatherings for the holidays. And I guess there is that so-called COVID fatigue where people started to, let their guard down. So November, we saw, I believe it was 35 deaths in Suffolk County. And now, through the first 8 days of December, so the numbers, I haven't calculated yesterday's numbers, but I assume this are even higher. Through the first 8 days of December, we had 34 deaths. So that is more than August, September, and October in Suffolk County combined. So clearly, we are going to hit, likely we're going to probably hit more than 100 deaths for the month at this rate. If we're going through 8 days, we're already 34 deaths. And it does not look to be slowing down. The infection rate across Long Island is now over 6%. It was only a few weeks ago where we were at 1.5%.
Yeah.
I mean, the climb has been steady. We're not where we were at the height of the pandemic, but we're not that far away. We're seeing hospital capacity growing. The hospital capacity, the beds
decreasing.
Are decreasing. We're seeing fewer and fewer ventilators and ICU rooms available. Now, the state is now beginning to change their metrics for how they close things down, no longer relying on infection rate and more relying on hospital capacity. And when a Long Island's region reaches a certain level of hospital capacity where beds are no longer available, that's when things would start to shut down.
Yeah.
But we're not doing well. I mean, to be honest with Long Island readers, this is not good right now. We are in a bad spot, and most likely it's not going to get any better through the end of the year and probably in the first month or so of 2021. Advice is to stay indoors, to wear masks, to social distance, to do all the basic hygiene, and to limit the small gatherings, especially around this time of the year.
Yeah. We went from, I believe, at New York at the height, we were experiencing something like 700 deaths a day.
Yeah.
Can we, I mean, it's an assumption, but I've always felt that it was the masks that brought that down to zero. I mean, I get the hand,
the masks and the social, I mean, I think there's a lot of factors involved. I think it can't be underestimated how little we knew about the virus initially on.
The treatment also.
We were playing catch up in hospitals across the region, trying to understand how to treat the virus. I think there was a much greater reliance on ventilators then, less so now. We use them sort of as a much further last resort. So we know more and we have better therapeutics. We have a better feel for masks. We have a better feel for what's necessary. Back early on, people were scared to touch their takeout bag, and whether or not you had to wash every bit of your groceries. We know more about that now. The masks and social distancing was big, and really important was being able to do everything outdoors. Obviously, the summer months, I think it's expectation that most health experts, Dr. Fauci included, say that the virus is transmitted much more difficult to transmit in outdoor settings, which is why beaches were able to open across New York State, and we still had infection rates of 1%. And when the weather cools and people go back inside and they start to have their gathering indoors, here we are.
Exactly. No, I know that's something that, again, has been talked about by the governor, specifically the home spread, as being one of the root causes of maybe this second spike and people letting their guard down, maybe at home with other individuals, especially during the holiday season. And we're concerned, as we progress and alluded to at the beginning of the interview, that we're now moving into the Hanukkah and Christmas and the end of the year kind of celebrations that we're hoping, we don't see this continue to rise into the new year. Fingers crossed, but, we will see. And the other thing is, too, that, and just, I know you've mentioned hospital capacity. I do know that in Buffalo and Erie County, I believe that they had to dial back elective surgeries. And I know the governor was talking about, for as early as this new coming week, potentially having to monitor the numbers where if it's over 10%, where city restrictions may come a bit harder, and even some things like dining capacity statewide may be impacted. And is there anything that you're seeing in reporting?
I would imagine that's going to be based on region by region. It's going to be based upon hospital by hospital. Yeah. So, but I mean, I'm not sure a one-size-fits-all approach is certainly going to be in place for that. We certainly could get to the point where elective surgeries could get suspended again. We're not there yet, and there's a lot more triggers that the state can pull on. I mean, we still had indoor dining opened. That's New York City. That's probably right on the brink. There's a lot of different levels of retail that are still open. Clearly, the one thing no one wants to do is close schools.
Yeah.
And I think most people agree on that. We will get a bit of a break at the end of the year. The schools will be closed for a week and a half or so, give or take. So that presents both an opportunity and a concern because transmission rates have actually been very low in schools. I know we get as a parent of myself, I have two children, one in middle school, one in elementary school, and we get reports every day about cases in the school district, but they're one at a time. And I think what we're seeing is that we're not seeing bulk transmission. I haven't seen 12 kids infected at the school, so they're not passing it to each other. They're getting infected at home through social gatherings, through other means. They're testing positive, but they're not passing it, it appears, not on any great level.
Right.
And we're also going to possibly see, as the rates go up, We've seen in Suffolk County and now in 5 school districts, there's a mandatory level of testing that has to happen in the school now at this point. And it's part of the cluster zones in the orange zone. So we're probably not far away from seeing that on a greater level across Long Island and across New York State, where a percentage of students and faculty have to be tested every 2 weeks to keep the school districts open. Yeah. So there's a lot more steps to go before we have to get into a full lockdown mode again. And I don't think anybody really has an appetite for that, particularly as the vaccine comes down the pike. So we have this sort of bridge period, I believe, where we have the vaccine coming. How quickly can we get it to the population? And what do we have to do to sort of just keep our head above water for the next month, 2 months, 3 months as that vaccine comes? And I don't think anybody really wants to start shutting down all levels of industry, shutting all retail and restaurants and gyms and barbershops again, just for that period of time. But, only the numbers can dictate that.
And that's why, like you said, the personal kind of behaviors and doing the things that we know are proven, effective is what we can do to try to limit that. And let's remind our listeners that they are listening to this week's Long Island News here on 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College. And Bill McIntyre and myself are here with Newsday's Robert Brodsky, talking about, obviously, COVID and some of the other issues that are impacting Long Islanders specifically this week. Yeah. And just to wrap maybe on the COVID, I guess, I think it's interesting that the schools now have become the alarm that goes off. As far as, being the filter that catches these cases. And like Robert said, they're not giving it to each other, but a kid goes home, maybe goes to a relative's house for a dinner and comes, and he's got it now. Party, but it's the school that identifies it. Well, yeah, you have,
it can't be understated how great of a job school children across the state and across Long Island have actually done in following these really almost impossible guidelines. Yeah. And the fact is, I haven't seen numbers, but I would venture to guess proportionally as part of their segmented population, we're seeing way more faculty proportionally test positive than we are seeing students. I get a lot of reports about, a faculty member at so-and-so school testing positive. And, obviously there's certainly a way more students than there are faculty. And I'm seeing a large number of those, and which means that the students themselves are doing their part. Yeah. And, it's unfortunately, it's on the adults to catch up with the kids. In this case.
No, it's a very important point, like you said, to see that, again, the children are rising to the challenge, and maybe it's the nature of, them kind of complying a little bit more with the authority figures, their teachers, their parents, than even sometimes the parents of the teachers themselves, ironically. But all right, just to maybe wrap that part with a bow, just because we did just interview Republican legislator John Ferretti right before we were on with you now. We had a question because I guess he's raising a resolution regarding specifically New York State Department of Health limited service laboratory licenses. I guess apparently Nassau County was the only county not to already be actively doing this on-site testing at the schools because of this license issue. Can you shed any more light on why that was, why Nassau was potentially the only county to not opt into that program?
Actually, it's not a question that's come up as far as I know, but it's something that I'm going to make sure to follow up with County Executive Laura Curran. There are labor union involvements, and there are a lot of different factors I would imagine that would dictate whether or not testing can occur in schools. But yeah, it's certainly Nassau is an outlier on that, and that's something that going forward they probably do need to rectify.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, definitely look forward to hearing more about what you find in your reporting, and when you're able to, again, get maybe a comment by the county executive on the record. So just last thing then, specifically with COVID, we think about, again, obviously the public health in terms of the actual virus and the vaccine and everything like that. But we know that you wrote recently about the effects and impacts on dealing with another epidemic that we've been dealing with for too long in Long Island, which is the opioid crisis. So can you speak a little bit more about what your reporting found on how that's been impacted?
Well, Newsday hosted a webinar yesterday with some public health experts, and it's a crisis that most public health experts saw coming when the when the population shut down for COVID, among the things that shut down were AA, NA meetings, a lot of the opportunities for addicts to see, feel, touch, meet with sponsors, and clearly the stress associated with COVID and the lockdown, the economic anxiety that comes with it, the public health concerns for yourself and your family, the loneliness, everything that comes across, everything that's part of this horrendous package that is COVID-19. It affects addicts in a much different way than the rest of the population. So after years of seeing Long Island's overdose deaths grow and grow and grow, and we were the tip of the spear, particularly in Suffolk County, for opioid deaths across New York State. I think there was more than 615 deaths in Suffolk County, in Long Island in 2017 alone. And we had finally sort of brought those numbers down. It took a while, a lot of public health, a lot of different new technologies, a lot of education, and we finally had brought those numbers down. Not that we certainly hadn't solved our opioid problem, but it had made a major dent. And then COVID-19 came, and it sort of washed everything away. And with people locked down, there was this incredible increase again in overdose deaths. And one public health expert said we're right back to where we were at the start of this crisis. And ironically, and I'm sure most listeners here can kind of empathize with this. What did we see at the start of this crisis, at the start of the pandemic? We said liquor stores are essential businesses. Essential businesses. And I can speak for myself as well. You pulled up to the wine store, to the liquor store, and you stocked up because you didn't want to know how long you were going to be out there, and you're stuck inside. And that's one thing for you and I, or for individuals who have a better control of their drinking. But for an alcoholic stuck inside, and all of a sudden they're told that alcohol and liquor stores are essential, and they don't have access to the treatment that they would want to, and hospitals overwhelmed by cases no longer have the capacity to deal with people doing detox. They couldn't fit them in. It's a combustible package, and we've started to see, unfortunately, these numbers go up. So we're seeing overdoses from heroin, from other opioids going up. We're seeing cases of alcohol dependency going up. We're seeing, obviously, cases from domestic violence go up, depression, suicide. These are all these factors that come along with this, and it's unfortunate, but it's a challenge for the public health experts.
Undoubtedly. Definitely, like you said, the compounding impacts of the coronavirus pandemic are really widespread. And I know we've talked last week to the director of Long Island Cares about the issues with food insecurity, and we've talked about the mental health issues with the county executive, and we know that there's programs and there's a lot of good NGOs and partner agencies that are trying to do good work, but just demand with everything going on, unemployment crisis, so many different things. That it is unfortunate to see. I think what was about 40% year over year, approximately. An increase after all that hard work and all the time for the Narcan trainings and everything else. That was trying to be done. Hopefully that'll be stemmed as we see progress made on the virus. So
I think a major factor in this is the economics of it. I think that you have individuals who lost their jobs and are living hand to mouth, and all of a sudden they find themselves at a food bank, and they're trying to numb the depression and pain.
That's a good point.
Yeah, sadly it works for the short time, right? They used to call alcohol a solvent. It dissolves things like marriages and houses and jobs, and it's really bad. And you're exactly right. It's like a perfect storm.
Mm-hmm.
If you were in the addiction issue and you're home now, you're locked in. What's the easiest thing to do is to go get booze, because you can't get to an AA meeting, you can't go to a hospital, you can't do any of the other things you would do that would be the healthy avenues to take.
Yeah. No, I know we did talk about it. We wondered how many, AA, NA type of groups are conducting Zoom-based, kind of meetings, and, potentially that could increase some, kind of participation, but it also could obviously stifle maybe some members who aren't obviously as adept at the technological kind of adaptation process. But let's move into another thing you reported on that has been a constant, especially over the last 3 years since the policy was changed. The SALT cap. And I know that the Congressman, Tom Suozzi, who, managed to win his reelection after at first it seeming like it wasn't going to be so, came out pretty hard, as he has tended to be with a lot of the Long Island electeds, about people who aren't going to be in favor of repealing, again, that cap. So you want to talk a little bit more about that and the prospects of this whole thing going into the new administration and congressional session.
Right. So to back up a bit, as part of the 2017 Republican tax bill signed into law by President Trump, the SALT, the state and local tax that many Long Islanders pay, was capped at $10,000. That leaves a lot of Long Islanders, according to my reporting, 530,000 Long Islanders, or more than a third, are affected by this cap. Yeah. So, as a result of this, Long Islanders on the SALT level are paying more in federal and state taxes. They're not able to deduct it. Congressman Suozzi has been one of the more vocal lawmakers campaigning to repeal the SALT cap. Now, so what he's done differently, now we're coming to the end of the congressional session so in January, when lawmakers return, the congressman has said he's going to reintroduce legislation that would repeal the cap. He's going to pressure new members as well. This is a very partisan issue. The legislation passed on a particularly almost only Republicans supporting it. So the congressman's added a little bit of fire to his proposal this time. One, he's telling his constituents and telling all New Yorkers, do not contribute to any lawmaker in New York, Long Island, or across the country who opposes my legislation, who opposes the repeal of the SALT tax. But taking it even a step further, he is going to create a list that will identify all donors to elected officials across the country who do not support repealing the SALT cap. So anyone who contributed at least $1,000, he hasn't said exactly what that bar is going to be. It could be a little bit higher, could be lower, but he wants to create a list and publish it, identifying and shaming to some degree any contributor who gives money to candidates, for example, Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, Marco Rubio, Republicans who have been adamantly opposed to it. And this would be quite a project. And not just we're no longer talking about just the candidates themselves and the politicians, but actually holding the contributors, everyday Long Islanders, everyday New Yorkers, accountable for their contributions as well.
Fascinating. Individual donors, we hear a lot of times about advocacy groups kind of putting out information on political contributions, for different purposes and causes. But has that really happened too often before in terms of putting out, again, individual donors publicly like that? Well,
you see that from
FEC filings.
From journalism groups. You see that from nonprofits who want to say, who's funding the gun lobby or who's funding any kind of special interest. Mm-hmm. You don't see that from elected officials. Obviously, so much of of the job of any elected official is raising money, and now we're talking about outing the donor and of any of your usually folks who are on the other side of the aisle. Now, this information is publicly available. Yeah. Reporting on campaign finance. So it's not as if this is information that the public can't access themselves, but putting it into one handy is useful. I think it's also useful. I mean, after my story was published, I got a set of readers who told me, here's the problem and the fault. Here's why Congressman Suozzi is is faulty in terms of his logic here. He says that, while we pay more on the SALT tax, we are not able to deduct it. There were a lot of deductions that were beneficial to Long Islanders included in the tax bill, including the elimination of the alternative minimum tax that lowered the tax bill for a lot of Long Islanders. It was originally intended to be a bill that affected high earners, but a lot of Long Islanders are affected as well. Now, the congressman hasn't necessarily said, he would repeal all parts of the tax bill, and clearly he would probably just want the repeal of the SALT tax. But there is a bit of a trade-off, and obviously if you repeal the SALT tax, there's got to be a way to fund what's built into the tax system as a result.
Yeah, no, that definitely is fair. And, I know we've been watching this for a while, and it's interesting to see and think about what may actually come of it and how that may impact Long Islanders. Obviously, there's always discussion about taxes here on the island, and it's definitely good to see that there has been bipartisan support for this repeal. But, it's interesting to see, Congressman Suozzi getting a little more creative as the reporting has shown with, I guess, his method.
He certainly gets attention. Any elected official who talks about making a list, that turns heads.
Yeah, because like I said, it might be buried in FEC filing somewhere, but the average person, might not see it versus if you happen to be seeing, what he's distributing on his social media or somewhere else. But okay, we just have about a minute or two left here. We would have liked to discuss maybe a few more things, and maybe we'll have a chance another day. I know that there was a story you wrote last week about police advocacy groups and specifically the PBA contract. And I know that's a big discussion. I know there was a protest last night that your colleague Antonio, I believe Planas, was covering. So we'll get into that another day. But just real quick in the last minute or so we have here, I want to speak about another thing you wrote about, which was this was a nice positive story for Long Island. I think everyone can get behind. There was a Long Islander from Baldwin, a Jasmine, I believe, Mogbelli, who is going to be an astronaut, I believe, going to the moon. So this let our listeners know what they can. Maybe, right? If the money's there. But yeah.
Jasmine was a former among several astronauts selected as part of this Artemis program, and they are going to be trained for the next level of lunar missions, including to the moon, where we haven't stepped foot on the moon in quite some time. And among those, I believe it is 18 astronauts who were selected as part of this Artemis team, and it could grow to more, including international partners. Jasmine, they're going to select at least one man and one woman to be on the next shuttle mission that would go to the moon. There's probably going to be one per year, NASA says, so there's going to be multiple opportunities. But it does present the opportunity because no woman has ever walked the moon.
Yep.
Would have a Long Islander, and I'll give credit to NASA executive Laura Curran, who said, from Nassau to NASA.
A good one. Someone get that on a mug.
We could have a situation where a Long Islander is the first woman to step foot on the moon. And put on the moon, and that's quite an impressive achievement.
We'll remind our listeners that obviously they can follow all your reporting in Newsday, online, and still in print, and they can also follow your social media a number of places, but specifically a lot of times you break a lot of things in your reporting on Twitter at Brodsky Robert. So thank you again for your time, Robert. Have a good rest of your holidays and stay safe and be well.
We'll be back next week, correct?
I think we got one more, and then I think the holidays will be here faster than even imagined. So look forward to it.
Take care. We'll see you next time, same place. And just a reminder, you're listening to 90.3 WHPC.